أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We welcome everyone to today's Leadership Institute. As you can see, today's title is Board Leadership Partnership, Relationship, and Principal Appraisal. Inshallah, we'll be hearing from our wonderful speakers, Sister Najwa Asghar, the expert on board governance, and Sister Leela Shatara, who is also a well-known figure in this area. So inshallah ta'ala, having said that, we'll give the first to Najwa to start her presentation. So Najwa, bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'll ask Allah to give us a guidance and direction. And inshallah, we will be talking today about the board principal partnership and the best practices. In our outline, we have the leadership team for schools, and then the board principal partnership best practices, and some challenges that we will talk about related to board principal partnership. And then we will look into a couple case studies. And I want to just mention about the importance of the leadership for nonprofits. That leadership is very interesting leadership. Usually when we say leaders, and usually they are the people that they are leading the organization. Leadership is having a vision for the organization and ability to attract, motivate, and guide people to achieve that vision. The leadership of a nonprofit organization is fundamental to the success of the organization. And this leadership that we talked about, the team, is a very interesting one. In a nonprofit organization, leadership is shared between the board and executive director, principal. The compatibility of the board chair and the principal is crucial for the successful running of the organization. In this leadership, we have the board leadership, which is the board has the ownership of the nonprofit. And then the board chair's leadership. The board chair is the official leader of the board, and the strength of the board depends on the effectiveness of the chair. The board chair leads the board. Principal leadership is another aspect, which is the board delegates its authority to the executive director or principal to carry out the day-to-day responsibilities of the organization. The executive director or the principal leads the staff. A high-performing nonprofit is the product of both high-impact governing board and high-impact principal. These two elements are very important, and they work together as a cohesive strategic leadership team. See, the next slide is giving us a very clear understanding. This leadership team work together, and the board leadership, board chair leads the board, and principal leadership, principal leads the staff. So it is very important to both have a strong leadership qualities. So let's talk a little bit about how are we going to make that leadership theme clear, and we are going to make this relationship a positive one. Number one, it starts with the clarity of roles and responsibilities. And sometimes we get into the relationship without clarifying that, or sometimes, you know, what happens is there is already a pact and agreement between the previous principal and the board chair. We just follow that, but we don't get into it. So usually what I recommend is anytime that there is a change in leadership, people need to really strengthen that relationship and clarify the roles and responsibility. Well, one of the important elements here is the principal has a written contract. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We start with all good intentions, but the contract kind of give us a clarity of what is the responsibility and accountability, performance evaluation processes. So it is very important. I was a school head for 13 years, and I had maybe 3-4 times board chair changes. And I always ask the board chair, so it is like, how are we going to work together? And that clarity is very important. It is not only the written document, but also in agreement that how are we going to make that relationship a positive one. So we will kind of look into it. I identified here 10 areas. Number one is the clarity of roles and responsibility. Board has a written document clarifying roles as a whole board, individual board members, board chair, and committee chairs. Sometimes the board chair knows that relationship, but not all the board members they know. And it is very important to clarify the roles. Before the new board chair takes office, he or she has a discussion with the principal about expectation from each other. Aside from reviewing their formal job descriptions and the protocol of the interaction, the two leaders may want to craft a communications and accountability pact. Most of the time in my trainings, I find that people are having a problem with that clarity of roles and responsibilities. I would just say that it is very important that the first day that people take their office, I think they need to sit and ask each other. I used to ask my board chairs, what are your expectations from me? And then also I used to clarify what are my expectations from the board chair. So when we do that, it is kind of like there is an agreement and how are we going to make our work better for each other. The second thing is the mutual respect and trust. Keep all matters relating to governance, operations, and treatment of one another ethical and professional manners. I used to think that it is these board members, they are all very powerful, strong people in their jobs. But what happens when they come to the school office? It is usually, I'm talking about the board members or board chairs, they want to be relaxed, and usually the meetings are Saturdays or Sundays or after hours, and they just want to be relaxed and they want to be so comfortable with each other. And one time I had this issue with a board chair that I had ton of papers they needed to be approved, and so they were just talking to each other and they were talking and they were cracking jokes, and because they feel like it is really, this is their time to see their friends. And for me, what was important is to kind of finish the job. They agree that respect, trust, teamwork, and shared understanding among board members and principal are crucial for a successful partnership. I don't know if you ever expect that also, or see that the result of the board chairs, and sometimes they kind of take it easy and they don't pay much attention to that. Board chair and principal are committed to making each other successful, to present the best side in the open discussions, and in public forums they are always positive about each other. And it is, aren't there some problems? Yes, there are some problems, but these are resolved in closed doors, not publicly. Always keep a professional, cordial relationship between the board members and the principal. And then keep confidentiality. If the principal said in confidential that I'm having a hard time at my home and my family, and please be patient with me, that's confidential information, and we just need to respect that. Treat each other as equals rather than subordinates to hierarchy. Address all issues with an open mind in an open forum to permit discussion of all different points of views. I want to ask, do you have any issues with that? Anyone wants to share anything? Okay, it looks like you have a great relationships. Let's move on. And then open and honest communication is very important. The principal and board chair meet regularly to review hot issues and to prepare for monthly board meetings. I used to have a weekly meetings with my board chair, and when the board chair comes, I used to have a paper with the bullet points and what are the issues that we are going through and how am I taking care of it. And I used to give that to the board chair because I wanted the board chair to tell me, bring this to the board, or it is you are doing a great job, you are resolving it, we don't have to discuss it in the board. That's really important feedback from the board chair. This way the principal is kind of feeling comfortable that I shared it with the board chair, and then if it is something that he wants me to or she wants me to bring it to the board, I will do that. Both communicate frequently, either with phone call or email, to alert each other in a timely fashion about potential problems and ensure alignment of actions. I'm currently working with a school that their major issue is the board chair says, and our previous principal used to call me all the time and tell me all the information. And this new one is not calling me. I'm hearing the stories from outside. And this is kind of like something needs to be discussed and resolved. Answer emails promptly, even if it is to say, I get right back to you. Don't let issues fester. You know, this is one of the areas that I felt I had some difficulties. Sometimes I wanted to resolve the issues and then report. And then, however, by the time I report, usually the board chair gets the information. And when the board chair gets the information from the community and they feel like they were not informed, and why they were not informed, why didn't I say anything about this issue? I think we need to just say, I learned to say that, well, I have this issue I'm dealing with, and I'll get back to you when I resolve it, but I'm working on it. I'm working, that third grade teacher is not really doing a great job, but we are working on it, and I will let you know. Um, During the meetings, maintain professionalism by staying organized, using active listening, taking time to understand and remain flexible. During the board meetings, follow the rule of no surprises by principal and the board members. This was one of the problems that I used to feel. It is like I'm sitting in a board meeting, there are 12 board members there, and all of a sudden somebody brings up the issue that I was not prepared. And it is when something is like this is going to happen, I would like to hear from the board chair that there are some issues about it is coming to my attention. The third grade teacher is doing whatever, and can we discuss that further? And if he or she feels that this is a board issue, then I should be prepared and bring some information that is relevant and to inform the board. But all of a sudden, sitting in the board meeting and that 12 people are looking at my eyes and expecting an answer, and I'm not prepared, is not best thing to do. And so we call this a rule of no surprises. So don't bring up something that it is going to be a surprise to the board, and without being prepared also for it. Any questions here? I also welcome the feedback. If there isn't anything, let's move on to the next one. Working together towards the big picture. What is the big picture? It is the mission. And we would like to see that all of us are passionate for that mission. And that's why we recommend that every year in beginning of the school year, and especially when we have new board members, sitting together and kind of analyzing that mission statement and just seeing this, if everyone is in the same page. If there are some issues, it is the times are changing. Sometimes there are some issues that it is not mentioned in the mission statement, or some people are not passionate, that needs to be really clarified. I had a board member. He used to say it very openly. He used to say that I'm here in this board because my passion towards Arabic program, And anytime we are talking about anything, he used to bring the Arabic program. And that's not fair to the mission statement or to the rest of the people. Passion for mission is essential to building a shared leadership, decision making, and commitment. However, everyone needs to understand, if you have a special agenda, and if you feel that it is certain things are very important to you, but not to everybody else, you need to be really patient and put it in the agenda and bring people that it is they are. Uh, Arabic was not my strong area, so if something like this is going to happen and we are going to discuss the Arabic in the board meeting, I would rather bring some Arabic experts from the school, some Arabic teachers, Arabic people that they have expertise in Arabic, so they can answer the questions better than I can. The board chair and the principal both lead with the mission of the school in mind. Whatever it is important to us should be in the mission statement, and we always need to keep that mission in mind when we are making decisions. Cultivate the board's passion for the mission, guide them to make decisions based on mission. One of the things that I would recommend, and put in nice writings the mission of the school in the boardroom, 3, 4, 5 places. So let people see it all the time. Let it be always in our mind. If the board starts drifting away from the mission, start to lose the sight of mission, spend time with minutia, the board chair and principal need to bring the board back to the mission. It is something very interesting that I wanted to share with you. The school's mission was, there was a school, old school in California. It was a girls' school. So they decided one point that it is timely to add boys too. So the school became co-ed, but they didn't kind of look into the mission. The mission was talking about the girls' growth, girls' changes, girls. It's everything related to the girls. So it's a major change in the mission of the school. However, they didn't show that in the mission. While the balanced budgets are important, the board can only make an impact when the focus is mission driven. It is crucial to have a shared vision and common understanding of where we are going, how we will get there, how we will know that we have already arrived. So it is very important to keep that mission alive. Planning together, the board chair and the principal plan for successful board meetings, and they develop agendas jointly. It is, again, you wouldn't have this surprise element if together you put the agenda together, board chair and the principal. The board chair and principal work together to ensure board committee chairs are effectively prepared. The board chair, the governance committee chair, and the principal define value-added board development activities and actively strategize on their respective roles and ensuring the desired outcomes are achieved. One of the major elements, and sometimes it's a missing link, is the strategic plan. And having a strategic plan and working on the strategic plan all together, the principal, board chair, and the whole board, and having that is one way of having a same vision for the school. That strategic plan, when we are working with all the stakeholders and getting their feedback and capturing the information, it ensures that the everyone is also in the same page. They ensure that action items are followed through. So that strategic plan is very important. But after we achieve the strategic plan, we need to not just keep it or congratulate ourselves that we did it, but it is more like this is our roadmap. How is that going to be our roadmap? With the annual goal setting, you take the strategic plan and divide it to years. Agreed upon written goals between the board chair and the principal are important step to reach mutually agreed upon measures of success. If you have 5-year goals, strategic plan, divide that this first year to look at it and say, what are we going to work on this year from the strategic plan? No way that you are going to finish the whole strategic plan in 1 year, but just agree on what are those the areas that we are going to put it in our annual agenda, and put it in the beginning of the school year and coming back in the end of the school year and looking at it and just saying that we achieved. We took 5 areas to our annual goal and we achieved and we did a great job. And then now let's move on to the next year's the annual goals. If we do that in the end of 5 year or whatever the time that we gave for our strategic plan, we will feel accomplished. We will feel that we are ready to start to a new cycle of the strategic plan. Goals help us to provide a roadmap for the school leadership as well as the progress report for the board to consider when evaluating principal and the board. I always put it in the evaluation process that it is, what are the strategic goals that you have? How much did you achieve? Did you achieve any or not? Every year, the principal drafts his or her goals for coming year and meets with the board chair to discuss the possible changes. This draft is then circulated to the rest of the board for additional input and finalized. Throughout the year, the principal reports on agreed upon goals and provide final report at the end. Currently, I'm working with a school and the board chair wants to evaluate the principal. And one of the tools that we use is the principal's goals that it is set for the year. Of course, we need to be flexible. These couple years has been with the COVID. It is, I'm very passionate towards the whole principals and their job and what they are going through. And it is, you cannot expect everything else. Like I have one school, they are planning for an accreditation, but the principal was so overwhelmed with the COVID and the parents' needs and the students' needs and the teachers' needs. I'm recommending that maybe you need to postpone that because it is all of a sudden it is a different agenda hit, and that's not an easy one. A similar process will take place for the board chair and the committee chairs to set their annual goals and be evaluated from those goals. Each committee chair needs to sit with their committee members and try to figure out what are we going to achieve this year. And this needs to be made public, and this needs to be made, everyone needs to kind of understand this committee is going to work on these are the things this year. And it is end of the year, you come back. And one of the recommendations that I give usually is beginning of the year, you introduce yourself to the school community, the parents and everyone, and just say that these are our board members, these are committee chairs, they're all going to work on their own agenda. And it's each person would kind of share their goals for the year. And then the end of the meeting, they would say that, well, we will get together, inshallah, end of the school year, and we will give you a report. How did we do that? And it is okay not to achieve all the goals, but it is not okay not to set any goals. You need to set goals and end of the year to, and this is the way you are going to be transparent. This is the way that people are going to trust you, that you are the people that you announce what you are going to do, and then at the end of the year you will be announcing what you achieved. You know, putting all these goals together is the board's annual agenda. So when we say what is the board's annual agenda, it is the board chair's goals, the committee chair's goals, and the principal's goals put all together, and which is the roadmap for the year. And evaluation of the principal and the board, it is, what I'm going to say here is, it is very important to have an annual evaluation and with the agreed upon tools. Sometime I receive, like in May, people are asking me, how are we going to evaluate our school head or the principal? I feel it is too late. It is, those goals needs to be decided way before, and everyone knows what is the game of the rules of the game. You cannot all of a sudden decide a new tool and nobody knows that it comes to the picture. Um, so I'm not going to talk too much about the evaluation because I know that Sister Leila is going to talk about that. And I'm going to move on to commitment to excellence and continuous learning. This is a very important element. It is everyone. When we are sending the teachers, when we are finding faults in teachers, oh, this teacher is not good with this teacher is not good in classroom management, and let us send her to the, we need to think about ourselves too. What are the weaknesses we have, and how are we going to improve ourselves, and what kind of classes we are going to take. In my school, everyone had a file of continuous improvement. And it is like, how are you improving yourself? So this is really something important. And then commitment to handle crisis. Did we talk about 9? Develop the board to become more effective. Again, it goes with what I said before. Board needs to understand that it is like when we are aiming for excellence in the whole school, and the teachers and everyone needs to do everything is in a perfect way. The board needs to understand boards have a development plan, and they decide how are they going to improve themselves. That is really, really important. Board chair, principal, and governance committee chair together assess the current and anticipated needs of the board composition and develop a profile of a board as it should evolve over time. This is one of the important things. Do we have a board profile? And what kind of people we want in our board? Do we have a diversity? Diversity means it is not only the different backgrounds, but it is also different age groups, different knowledge groups. And so when we look at the board profile, we need to be able to see that, oh, our board is all older people. It is, we need to get some younger people. And we need to kind of have a 3 generation of boards. It is like the younger ones and the older ones and the middle age group. This is really important because we have different kind of strengths, and we need to focus on that when we are developing our boards. Um, Commitment to handle crisis professionally. How do we handle the crisis? And this is very important, and we see it in COVID. Sometimes the information is going right and left in a different ways. It is, we need to decide how are we going to send the information? Who are the people that they are in charge of sending information outside? The power of partnership is tested when the principle comes under attack. And sometimes it is in the COVID, we see that. People keep blaming the principal, and I keep thinking that the principal has a whole different agenda that needs to work on. The power of partnership is tested when the principal comes under attack. And that's the time the board step in and protect the principle. One of the things that I really try to open the eyes of the boards, the principal has such a big agenda to take care of. In that agenda, it is like no principal is going to be perfect in every area. If we say that the principal has 10 different responsibility areas, no way you can tell me someone is perfect in those all 10 areas. I think we need to understand that some people are good in some things, some people are better in some things. And so how are we going to fulfill the areas of not being very strong in certain areas? And one of the things that I will give you, quite often people ask me that we are going to hire a vice principal. Should we hire someone from inside the school or from outside the school? Should we hire someone this, someone that? I said, you don't ask me that question before you do your analysis of your school and kind of see also analysis of yourself as a principal. If I'm weak in finance, I want to bring someone that who's going to fulfill my weakness. If I'm weak on, let's say, math, I want to have someone who's going to be strong in math and helping the teachers in math. And I need to know my areas of strengths and weaknesses. And according to that, I need to hire people that they are going to make the school fulfill its goal. Eliminate the following signs of dysfunction at the partnership. Multiple messages are disseminated from individual board members and the principal about the direction of the school. Sometimes that happens. And one of the things that I would always recommend to the board, keep the confidentiality. And when the board members start sending some information to the outside without analyzing who's going to say what and what is the message, and you are being harmful to the school. Different work groups move into different directions and they do not communicate or consider the big picture in pursuit of their goals. It is committees are one of the ways that we function in the boards. However, sometimes the committees get into each other's areas too. Now we saw it with the COVID. We have a committee. They function as the health and safety. There is another committee. Their goal is just to put some workshops and trainings. And the one committee wants to put things for COVID. The other one feels, no, we kind of passed that COVID. Let's move on to something else. So sometimes the information kind of goes to the parents in a different way. The board's job is just to decide that this information is crucial for us, and the school principal or such a committee chair is going to send this information, and this is the message that we are going to give all together. And one of the important things about the board is to work with one voice. It is kind of like we are all going to have the same information. Sometimes we don't like certain decisions, especially if the board is voting with a majority. Sometimes majority wins something. However, the information is there are still, we don't want to have winners and losers. And that happens. And so losers, they go out and it is, let's say, this discussion about the teacher's salary raise. And if this information will go out and people say, oh, you know what, I voted for the 25% raise, and the rest of the board members, they felt like, no, we cannot give that raise. And so you are making yourself look good. However, what's happening is you are really showing off the weakness of the board. The board needs to make a decision, even if you are not happy with the decision that it is made, because majority decided on certain things. I think we need to be really very open and say that it is like, this is the board decision. There is a strong tendency to finger pointing inside and outside the boardroom instead of working toward collaborative action. And this is really one of the dangers that we see. Okay, I have here challenging question. Disciplining a trustee, whose job is it? The principal said we have a trustee stirring up trouble, communicating inappropriately with the staff and community members, and not respecting confidentiality, bringing up his children's issues to the boardroom, and my board chair will not discipline this trustee. The board chair says, how can I discipline volunteers? They give their time and money. I did not agree to do this when I signed up to be a chair. Let's just let him finish his term. What are the issues? What do you do? Who wants to give some answers here? Nobody wants to talk? Okay, let me finger point. Layla.
I think you should ask one of our students here, but colleagues. I think it's important to be accountable and to implement accountability. And it's regardless of whether it's a volunteer position or not.
Yeah. But the bottom line is, do you want to jump in, Sophia? Yeah. Well, basically, it is the when there is a problem in the board, who's the disciplinarian? The board chair. And usually the board chair, they don't like that. They don't like that. But it is their job just to help the board to move on.
Students, do our boards normally also have a governing body over the board, like a governance committee that oversees? Mhm.
Yeah, when the things are not moving right direction, the governance committee needs to get in also. Okay, parents.
So, sister, this is very interesting because we have a very small board, and a lot of the things that you're talking about is not happening. Do I have a good relationship with my board members? Alhamdulillah, I do. But to be honest, my board meetings are very frustrating because sometimes, like even in giving feedback, their words are not measured. They're very blunt. And but I do know they have great trust in me. And the way our board works is if there is no crisis, all is good. The principal's doing her job. But even all the things that you're talking about, like agendas and board chair, it's not happening. But what is interesting about who disciplines, I don't see in the meetings that we have, it can get pretty heated because our board members, and only 3 attend that are regular. Their perspective is always from a parent point of view or what their community tells them. And that to me is a bit frustrating, but I really don't see that they see this as crossing the line or a discipline issue or confidentiality. It's just a very weird situation. I don't know what to do about it.
It is, you mentioned about 3 board members attend. It is, I don't know how many board members you have. However, it must be it must be something in your bylaws saying that it is, if the board members, they don't attend, what will happen? And it is, you cannot imagine that. I mean, I don't know how many board members you have. Let's say if you have 9 board members, only 3 attending, that is not a board. That's a group of board members. They are attending a board meeting. They need to really understand that it is their responsibility, number one responsibility, to put a good agenda together, to attend the board meetings, and to make the decisions jointly. And so if they are not doing it, basically they are not doing their responsibility fulfilling. I think the boards usually very fast, they decide that the principle is not good, but they never talk about themselves and their weakness. And I wonder also,
Yes.
how do you become a board member? I mean, it's people just pulling you in and just say, come join and whatever. Is that the right way of bringing the board together? Would they give the principal responsibility to someone? Oh, I should just come and join the be a principal. If they are doing that, it is they are doing wrong. But it is, usually the schools go through thorough analysis of how is our principal, who do we need, what kind of a person do we need, how are the teachers, we need to evaluate the teachers. But when it comes to board, they are very, very weak in that. It is just they feel like, They got sent to the school, and they are doing a volunteer work. They are wonderful. And most of them are good, but it is kind of like they really need to understand what are their roles and responsibilities. How are they going to move the school to a better way? And it is what are they supposed to do to make things better? And I'll tell you, most of the time, if there are some problems in the school, the board has a responsibility in that. It is somehow they didn't do a right job, even if the principal is not good. It is like, why did you bring this person? Why did you not evaluate this person? Why you didn't give guidelines to this person and give some opportunities to this person? So even if the principal is not good, it is still the board has a responsibility. So because they have only one person, one employee, when you think about a principal, the principal has sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 staff members you need to evaluate. You need to kind of see how are they doing, and you need to give them some guidance. But the board has only one employee, which is the school head or the principal. And they better do a good job with the relationship or selecting or evaluating this person. It is really, really important to do that. So I understand if there are some other questions, I rather, I mean, I have a few more slides, but I rather have answering your questions in my time. Do you have any questions?
I have a question about, and thank you for all of this. This is so informative. I do have a question. We're talking about board members and selecting board members. I mean, we have an election that's open to the community. And this is the only, Islamic school that I've been at. So I don't know how it's done everywhere else, but as far as like, I don't know, qualifications, measuring qualifications, an application process for becoming a board member, that doesn't happen. I feel like sometimes it's a little bit of a popularity contest.
Mhm.
And I was wondering how others do this for their schools, as far as an election process or a vetting process. Does that exist? Or
Yeah, it is a very, very good question. And I bet there are many schools that they do election process. However, the best practices by California, not only California, nonprofit associations, they talk about the best practices is not the election. Election is not the best. Like you said, it becomes popularity contest. It becomes people are bringing and pushing their friends in the position. And it is, the best practice tells us that throughout the year, the board thinks about how is our board needs to be populated, and what kind of people that we want to bring to the board. And all the board members together, they decide, let's say, if our weakness is finance, probably we need to bring someone from a financial background. If we are looking for a property to expand, probably we need to have some real estate people. If we are having lots of legal issues, maybe we need to bring a lawyer to the board. It is kind of, we need to really start thinking about what are the areas that in our board it is weak. We need to bring some people to the board like that, and not the election, but it is the board members. They are all being responsible and coming up with, I have a school I'm working with. I'm saying that it is each board member need to bring 3 names and why they are bringing these names. And of course, looking at the profile of the board and deciding what is needed, and bring 3 names without kind of bringing those people to the board, and just say, I'm recommending these people. And this is their bios. That's why I'm recommending this person. And also a statement from the person who is thinking maybe to be part of the board. What kind of how are you going to take the board to the next step? What are you going to do? And what are your goals? So this is really a very, very important step to think about what kind of a people, because once you bring the board members, it is very difficult. You are stuck with them. And then if you ask them to leave, they get angry with you, the whole community will be angry with you, and they pull their children out. And so anyway, we need to be very, very careful. Who are we bringing to the board? Because that's the highest authority in the school. And if you are bringing wrong people, you are in trouble.
May I add, and Sister Najwa, all excellent points. Also, so our communities and Islamic schools sometimes are built in areas like a hub where it might be a medical community or engineering community. And so you end up with a homogeneous board where everybody's in the same field. And it's so, I was at a school where everybody was an engineer. And then I was at a school where most people were in the health industry. And like Sister Najwa said, you really need to look at what are the needs of the school, and you need and it needs to be heterogeneous, right? You need some diversity, different backgrounds when it comes to their professions, but also diversity in ethnicity and race. Sometimes our boards, because our founding members are often board members who stay on for decades, and the ethnicity and racial demographics of the community change over time, and that tends to stay sometimes, and it doesn't diversify with the progression of time. So there are a lot of things to look at. I think there was a document years ago that I don't know what echoing. Someone else's mic, I think. You need to maybe even create a chart and look at the diversity and make sure that the board is diverse. And so whatever the makeup is now, the people that are added are creating and establishing diversity rather than maintaining that same makeup of the board.
Mhm.
And age also, like you don't want everyone in there, because the needs of time change and the outlook on our student needs changes. And so you need people who are really in tune with what's happening with our youth and our children as well. So
Exactly. Well, if you have any other questions, you can continue. I have a few more
Yes.
slides.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes. Question?
Yes, please. This is Abdul Wahab. Assalamu alaikum. I'm sorry I joined late.
Yeah.
I'm traveling. This is Abdul Wahab from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yes.
And I have a question here about relationship between the board and the school principal. And I think Sister Layla, she did a workshop with for our board once. I don't know if she still remember or not. But I have an issue with the board that in our bylaws it says that the board has to serve only for 3 years. Then we had election, but the board, they don't want to have no election. They just want to continue and they, forever. So I don't know what to do. And they are, I think maybe Sister Lila can add more to this, because our board, they are not experienced in education. They are business people, and their main work, I mean, they have businesses, which is they are in the field of gas stations. So when it comes to education, they have no background of education at all. So how can I convince the board to give a chance to others in the community to participate as board members?
Is the question to me?
I mean, if Sister Leila, maybe she can have input to this for her knowing the board members. But this question is you, and if Sister Leila want to add to add something to it, that'll be great.
Yeah, I think this is one of the areas that I feel very strongly. And then if Sister Leila wants to add something, she will. Number one, if you have your bylaws will dictate what it should be. It is if your bylaws is saying that it is every 3 years, there will be a change in the board, that needs to happen. And you know, the bylaws are documents, legal documents. You cannot put something in the bylaws and then you don't do it. It is not a matter of convincing the board members. If your bylaw says every 3 years there will be a change in the board, their terms will be over. Some people tell me that, well, I have a very successful board and I have very good people, I want them to continue. You know what you do? If the bylaw says every 3 years there will be a change, it must be. However, if the board member is good and they want to continue, they can continue in the committee structure. They can continue in the committee structure, and the next time when there is another time to bring some board members, then they will come back. But they need to be out if the bylaws dictate that. I think one of the problems that I see is, and usually this is the problem of a board chair or a governance committee chair, it is like we don't follow the bylaws. Bylaws are not put there just for a joke. It is put there because it is we want people to follow the structure that it is recommended. No one is forcing you. I mean, you might say every 3 years, you might say every 5 years, you might say every 2 years, but once you put it there, it is a legal document. You will be accountable for it if someone will come to your school and say, let me see your bylaws and your practices. It is really a problematic. So it is, people tell me like, oh, our board members are not attending the meeting. And then I say, what does it say in the bylaw? The bylaw says, if you don't attend 3 board meetings, you're out. And did you ask them to leave because they didn't attend 5 board meetings? No one does that. So that's the problem of the board chair. Board chair needs to really follow all these rules that they put as a guidelines. Sister Leila, do you want to add?
No, I think you said it's really important. The bylaws, again, are a legal document, and as a nonprofit organization, you're required to follow your bylaws. Like that's the reason they're there. That's the reason you have to submit them when you actually submit application for 501c, right? So the board needs to understand the heaviness and the weight of the bylaws. The second is, let's say you start off with a few board members and they kind of just want to, sometimes we have to be practical. If they're not leaving, at least add more people. Like if you have a board and what we see sometimes is like 3 or 4 board members and they're the ones that are there forever. Well, your board should be larger than that. Maybe add 3 more. And then over time, it's not just the voice of those initial people. But what you will see as your organization grows over years is that parents and other stakeholders feel excluded, right? If it's the same board members, you will have disgruntled stakeholders in the parent community and the teacher community because things don't progress like they should when you don't have that process of renewal in the board. And so it is a very risky way to do things. And what we've seen, and I think Sister Najwa can attest to this, is if the board is not functioning based on best practices, it is detrimental to the entire institution. And over time, that's what will happen. And the board members need to understand that. Like they can't see it now because they think, well, we love the school. We started the school. We put so much into the school. And why do we need to add anybody else? But that's Islamically, that's not the way it is, right? There are principles of shura, there are principles of inclusion in our deen that have to be applied. And so it is a very risky path to be on when you don't have a diverse, growing, and evolving board.
Jazakumullah khair. Let me add one more thing, please. The board, like I mentioned before, they are very nice people, very generous. When I start the school, they support me financially with no limit. Like I bought a building for 1.5 million, they donate to 300,000, and the rest of I collected it from others. I mean, they are so supportive. The only issue that I had, like I said, with them, they lack of knowledge, lack of experience, and in the other hand, excessive usage of the authority. Sometimes I will, oh, why that teacher doing this? Why didn't you accept this student? They get micromanagements big time. I am planning and opening a different branch, another branch for my school. The community is big, and we have big support from the community as the only Islamic school in the city, and we have more than 3,000 Muslim students in the public school. So everyone is supportive of that or that way, and I have no issues with teachers, nothing. I have actually brother Hamid Ghazali. He came to evaluate the school last week. He said, Brother Abdul Wahab, you have all the means to grow. You have good. The core of education in the school is good. Everything is organized, building wise, staff, everything. But with the board is not functioning. 7 months they did one meeting, and because I called last week, I said, guys, if you wanna, I'll give you a report of progress report to know what's going on in the school, and they have to call. Then finally the president of the board came yesterday to school. I give him a brief like introduction of what's going on in the school. But like I said, the issue is they are not, they use their authority in the wrong way. That's number one. Number two, referring to the point of election or not electing the board members, I am part of other schools too, which is MTI School of Knowledge in Indianapolis. We change the 50% of the board every 3 years. It's been going like that for 30 years. No issues, mashallah. The community involved, the diversity of the board is 100%. We said like we have to have two, for example, 2 Yemenis, for example, 2 Pakistanis, 2 Indians, 2 African American. We like diversity in the board. We have no issues, subhanallah. And all the time we tackle. I mean, we get the need. Like we need somebody with a good background of accounting, background of education, background, diversity in backgrounds and nationalities too. Well, we have no issues. So I don't think that's to refer to the talk previously about what's the best practice to have election or not. I think election is the best way to protect the organization itself. And one more question that I want to conclude with. As our bylaws, it says we have to have election every 3 years, and the board saying no, we can't change the bylaw. And because I bought everything myself. We can bear with my team in the school to the other school in Indianapolis to put the same system. So it says if the board come to disagreement with the principal, then we have a third party to be involved, an Islamic institute or scholar, whatever it is. So it's not the principal call or the board call. Do you think should we get this in place now or to activate the procedure now to just protect the school or no? I thought too much, by the way.
His question is, should he involve a third party between himself and the board?
Yeah, because of them not allowing anybody to be involved. I don't like it. We have Burmese, we have Sudanese, Somalis, Kenyans, Singals, everywhere, and we have just only one nationality.
I think this may be a very specific concern that you have, and maybe should be discussed offline, because this is a recorded session.
Okay.
With the rest of those voters that have signed up for this session. So maybe you can ask us the question offline.
Who do I ask though? Who wanna volunteer to answer the question?
So Najwa, do you want to?
I think you might agree or disagree. But I believe that best practices for the boards needs to be adopted because we are a nonprofit organization, number one. Number two, we know that the effectiveness of these practices, it is eventually the things might be okay for you, but eventually it might cause a problem. So I believe, and I've seen it, and I've been in this business more than 30 years. And I've seen that it is not this year, but maybe 10 years from now or 3 years from now, it is going to be some issues and problems. I believe that whatever your bylaw says, you need to follow it because we are also the law of the land is this bylaws. Nobody forces you to put 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but once you put it, you need to follow it. It is very important. And I really would not accept any board member who's going to say to me, it is, I mean, your bylaw, our bylaw says whatever, but I'm not going to do that. No, you are out in that case. So it is, I would bring all my board members together. I will look at the bylaws. If you want to make any changes, you could make some changes in the bylaws, but formally it needs to be done. After that, you need to have a commitment from everyone that we are going to follow whatever the bylaw says. And it is because usually the bylaws are not, Allah didn't send it. It is not a hadith. It is not whatever, but you are putting it there for everyone to follow it. So once we put it there, we need to follow it. So anyway, this is my belief in the board issues. So I mean, you can do anything you want, but I believe that that's the best practices.
Thank you.
Dominic, if I may chime in, we have about 40 minutes of the session left for today. And today's topic was principal-board relationship as well as principal evaluation. Maybe we can have the participants hold their questions for the end. After 1 o'clock, if someone wants to stay over or whatever, but let's focus on the training agenda for today, inshallah.
Yeah, I think I would probably leave the stage to Sister Layla. So go ahead with the principal evaluation.
Okay. All right, some very interesting conversations, and I think the board principal relationship is really crucial for the sustainability and effectiveness of our schools. Sister Najwa, if you can stop sharing, I will try to share. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Many parts of what I'm going to talk about, Sister Najwa already mentioned as being part of the effective and positive relationship between the board and the principal. The only employee of the board is the principal or head of school, and part of that relationship should involve an accountability piece. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about why that's important. Again, this goes back to everything we just talked about. The relationships are built on trust and mutual understanding, and there has to be an initial, when the principal and board sit together, there has to be an initial conversation about what the expectations are, and the relationship has to be one where they can trust each other to follow the bylaws, to follow the guidelines that they have put in place for their institution. And again, keeping in mind that the school leadership, that's the board and the principal, they model the way for the rest of the community. And when this relationship is positive and supportive, great things happen in a school, and the school can develop and progress. If that relationship starts to deteriorate, it shows in the school, and it impacts all the way down to our children. And we really need to protect our children, and that's the reason we're here. So the egos, the relationships, the issues at the top level, we want to really make sure that those are positive, so that what trickles down to our children is positive. So why do we need an evaluation for the principal or head of school? And the key here is why. And the reason we need one is to help guide the professional development of the principal and the school improvement process. Because the evaluation includes helping the principal look at what their areas of strength are, what areas they need to develop in, but also it guides the school improvement process with their annual goals. And Sister Najwa mentioned that again, that one of the first things that you have to do at the beginning of the year is actually meet with the board and set those annual goals based on the school strategic plan. Another reason we really need to have principal evaluations in place is because we often see this tension between the principal and the board, where the board may say, well, the principal's not doing a good job, or the principal is doing a great job. I think one of the sisters mentioned that as long as the school is afloat, everything's great. And it's, you know, when it's not in crisis. And that's not really the way an organization that wants to continue to grow and improve should function. There needs to be guidelines and goals set each year. So this evaluation can be used for retention, raises, but also relationships. We sometimes see boards let go of heads of school or principals without an evaluation process in place. And then, or when we have principals who are looking, you know, for raises and we're looking at equity in salaries, those evaluations can help with that process. There's a document, there's actually verifiable information to look at rather than personal feelings or things that are outside of this realm. And again, Alyssa, why is it really important to have these evaluations? It clearly defines expectations. Principals often are functioning without clear expectations by the board. And that needs to be set in place when the principal is first hired or at the beginning of each year. It initiates, the improvement process with the goal setting. It ensures that the mission is being fulfilled, that the principal is being held accountable for fulfilling the school mission. It focuses on student achievement, because whatever goals we set, the bottom line is everything leads to how it impacts our students. It supports instructional leadership. Those goals should find their way to guiding how a principal is impacting what happens in the classroom and what happens with student learning. The expectations also drive the management administration of the organization. That's budgeting, resource management, whatever the board's expectations are, need to be very clearly defined when it comes to that. How is this done? So a lot of states have principal evaluation systems in place that you can look up, and I will share a couple of them with you towards the end. But there are domains listed that are that you can align with and you can create to use as a foundation for the principal evaluation. The goals have to be set for each year. A small committee from the board or the board chair actually sits with the principal to look at the expectations and goal setting. And this process has to be collaborative and collegial, and it has to be based on mutual agreement with an intention that is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the sake of the school. It cannot be based on personalities. So clearly defined expectations, that's where we have to start. Again, the board has to make it very clear to the principal what their expectations are. And there are expectations of the principal as a leader and expectations of the principal as a manager. So in leadership, the principal as a leader, we're looking at their vision, having buy-in to their vision, setting high expectations, how they fulfill the mission, how they build positive school culture, the plans they create with their leadership team for continuous school improvement, the systems of communication they have, the alignment of curriculum and assessment. And then as a manager, we're looking at the safety, security, and health of the school, how they maintain the facilities, the budgeting and management of resources, having handbooks for processes and procedures for everything that happens in the school, having compliance to laws, whether they're local district laws, state laws, or federal laws, and then how they apply and handle federal and state grants. So these are just some examples. This is not an exhaustive list, but when sitting with the board, sitting with the principal has to have clearly defined expectations for them as the leader and the manager of the organization. When setting goals, there should not be more than 3 to 5 goals, and these should be, again, a collaborative effort between the principal and the board. And Sister Najwa talked about how that process can occur, where the principal can come up with their goals and then share it with the chair and then the rest of the board. But it should be based on the school strategic plan or priorities. So you take whatever your strategic plan is for the school and break it down to annual goals or short-term needs. Again, that was mentioned again by Sister Najwa. And I just listed here a few examples, like if there's a concern about, let's say, reading scores, and you want to improve reading scores, then one of those goals may be to review the ELA curriculum and alignment. If you want to enhance your Quran program, maybe a goal could be to redesign the Quran department and devise grade level objectives. If an issue is finances, then maybe one of the goals could be to create efficiency in the business office. Again, these are just some examples of what the principal goals might be. And again, if you don't set goals, it's very difficult to get to the end of the year and know whether you accomplished anything or not. And I'm sure every year we do great things, and principals are amazing at what they do, but there has to be a system in place for the principal to know what they need to do, and for the board to be able to look and say, well, did the principal achieve this or not? But again, we have to keep in mind that this isn't a process to kind of test or judge the principal. It's a process where the board works with the principal, like so that if there are areas they need help with or development in, they get the support of the board, or they get professional development to help them improve in whatever areas they need to improve in. Or if there's let's say someone doesn't have a lot of budgeting background, maybe they take a course in that or take some professional development in that in order to help improve their expertise in that area. So it's not a way for the board to kind of judge, but a way to help the principal grow and develop as a professional. So accountability, again, leaders, we have to be accountable. And this is a principle in our Islamic beliefs. Like, we're all accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're accountable for the institutions we're in. And so no one should have an issue with doing evaluations, whether it's the board evaluating themselves or the principal who is accountable to their highest authority in the institution. This is necessary for the improvement process. Again, using the evaluation to help principals improve rather than to penalize them for shortcomings. It initiates and propels conversations between the principal and the board. And school improvement is a collaborative process that begins with the leadership and strategic planning. Again, this is accountability. This is what it drives, the improvement process. And like I said, it ensures that the mission of the school is alive and fulfilled. That in the process of setting these annual goals, there's a focus on maintaining Islamic principles, knowledge, and practices, whether it's for the leadership, the staff, and the students. Remember, fulfilling the mission as Islamic schools means that we're all growing and developing our knowledge and practices based on those principles. And the most important reason we're there is that we're looking at student progress in religious and secular subjects, student character, and leadership. How do we ensure that we're developing the character and leadership skills of our students if there isn't a way to be accountable on different levels? So principals are accountable to the boards, teachers are accountable to the principal, students are accountable to the teachers. And this alignment has to be in place in order for us to really know whether we're accomplishing our goals or not. Instructional leadership. This is a term that's come into the leadership theory over the past decade, because where school principals used to be seen as managers, they're now seen as instructional leaders, and their focus, whatever they're doing, whether it's managing the finances or resources or professional development of teachers or evaluations, the outcome is how does that impact the instruction in the classroom and student achievement. And of course, this is what we end up, unfortunately, sometimes focusing on more than anything else. It's the organizational management, running an efficient and systemized institution and managing resources. This is the business aspect of the principal's job and ensuring that that's done well. In conclusion, the evaluation tool, whether it is something that you come up with based on the domains of state evaluations and the goals, is an instrument used to help develop principal skills and knowledge, and should be based on clearly defined expectations and goal setting. The end of year evaluation should lead to setting goals for professional development and learning for the principal for the following year. So you set your goals at the beginning of the year, you go through the year and work towards those goals. And then when you meet at the end of the year with the board chair or that committee, you're looking at what was accomplished, what needs to still be worked on, and then what areas that the principal themselves needs to work on. I'm going to share my goals. I think I don't know if everyone does. I'm going to share. These were my goals as the head of school for 2020-21. You can see the goals here. Oh, I'm not sharing, am I? Yeah. This is an example, again, to just make it real. My goals for that year, and this was done based on what our needs were as a school and part of our strategic plan. And the first goal was to enhance the Islamic Studies, Quran, and Arabic programs, or redesign them. And then I had the specific steps, like recruit, hire, and retain scholars or department chairs. At the time, we did not have chairs for Arabic, Islamic Studies, and Arabic. Define their roles, and then redesign the curriculum. And this was done over a year's time. And I don't want to spend too much time on this unless. The second goal was to increase efficiency in the business office. And so there were specific tasks. And again, you can see who I assigned to most of that. I worked with different individuals to meet different goals. There was a timeline set, and then there was a column for our progress. The third goal was to enhance the expertise of the staff through professional development, mentoring, and coaching. And then, of course, I added this section because we end up doing so much more than those few goals that we listed, because we're working on so many areas, and there were actually more things done that were outside of the goals than we named 3 goals, but with that year, we also revised the mission and vision and core values. We went through the process. We did major technology upgrades and things like that. So this was the goal setting with the board. And then there was the end of the year. It's kind of just showing you the process of how we did this. Sorry. This was what was submitted at the end of the year and discussed with, it was sent to the board, and then it was discussed with the committee and the board chair, and then I did actually a presentation for the board. So this was the action plan and results for the head of school goals for the year. And it shows, goal 1, the tasks, and then completion or timeline status. So some things were completed, some things continued into the next year. Goal 2, it was still ongoing. That's still actually goal 2 from a year and a half ago is still ongoing. And that's just an example again of the document that was submitted to the board at the end of the year.
Mr. Layla,
yes.
I'm so sorry. Would you mind sharing
those
that
documents?
the template with, if you could.
There's nothing confidential in there. I'll
Okay.
take out names if I don't think there are names, but I can share those with you that use.
Thank you so much, because that is awesome. I love how that's organized, because usually mine is just like a bullet point list, and it doesn't help sometimes, but thank you so much. That would be amazing.
I'll send them to Sister Farah to send with the link to this, inshallah. I also wanted to share with this group something that I think we need to do as Islamic schools, and that is to actually review. I'm going to share again. Sorry, I know I'm sharing a lot of documents, but I think we need to look at like what this actually looks like, right? So in public schools and religious schools, actually parochial schools have the same thing, and I have some samples of that. About 6 or 7 years ago, I started to devise, because I did teacher evaluations for a long time, and then we were constantly being asked about principal evaluations, and I started to put one together for Islamic schools, and it was based on the Marzano model. But this is an example of the domains. This is a New Jersey State evaluation chart for principals. So if you can look at it, has just like the teacher evaluation has the different domains, so does the principal evaluation. And again, here's domain 1. It's the mission, vision, and core values. And the principal consistency, look, if you look at number 4, which is highly effective, the principal consistently plans, implements, supports actions that develop, advocate, and enact shared mission, vision, and set of core values. And so I think we need to pull something together like this that applies, where we can take what's already in place and as best practices around the country and make it modified in a way that it is specific for Islamic schools, because our mission is, you know, based on Islam. So we would take some of Islamic principles and actually put the wording into these domains. Again, domain 2 is curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Domain 3, professional capacity of school personnel. Equity and cultural responsiveness. Community of care and support for students. And this is about involving and promoting the academic success through the community programs. And then meaningful engagement of families and community. And of course, the big one, operations and management. And again, if we look at different states, they're similar domains, but I think that's why I sent the survey in the CISNA leaders group yesterday, or a couple of days ago. And the interesting thing is that survey had just a few questions that asked whether you were a board member or a principal, and then about the evaluations. And there were only 13 responses, but only 3 of the 13 actually have a system in place for evaluating principals. It's a small number, but it's still telling. And so I think the fact that we're not really doing that process of evaluation and accountability, neither at the board level or the principal level, is maybe one of the reasons that Sister Najwa and I and many others are constantly called in to help with this relationship. At some point, there's a breakdown between what's happening between the board and the principal, because there is not a system in place, and it becomes about personalities and feelings rather than best practices. And so that's it. I know that was a lot in a short period of time, but I wanted to leave some time for questions if there are any. So are there any questions? If there are no questions, that means I did a great job.
You did a great job.
So it's a lot of information, and it's difficult because it's a lot to process. And I'd be interested to know if any of you have a system in place. Are you in place? Does your board do an evaluation of themselves? And then 2, is there an evaluation process? So we'll do it one at a time. Do you know if there's the board does evaluations of themselves?
I would start. Thank you, Sarina, for the beneficial presentation. We didn't have a system in place as far as the board to evaluate themselves or to evaluate the principal. But we meet in the beginning of the year to set goals in the beginning of the year. And because we didn't meet regularly, but like I said, we met like once 2 months ago. After like from the beginning of the year to like a month ago, we met once. So so
That's
no
problematic.
evaluation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so again, it goes to the bylaws have to state certain things and then everyone has to follow those bylaws.
So can you share with us the evaluation? So maybe after meeting with the chairman, we have a meeting on Tuesday. Maybe I can start putting together something similar to the template that you have
Mhm.
for principal evaluation, so I can give it to them to do evaluation for the principal, and then we can come up with something to evaluate the board, self-evaluation or something like that.
Well, there are sample board evaluation forms that I think I shared them with you when I did the training.
Honestly, I don't remember.
Yes, I did. There were evaluation forms for the board chair, for himself, for each individual member, and then a form where they evaluate the board as a whole. And I'm going to tell you, I'm working now at Noodle Iman School in New Jersey with one of the best boards I've ever seen, mashallah. We have a governance committee that ensures that best practices are in place. And when I felt like, I think it was the first year I was at the school that there was a concern I had with the board, I sent them an email. They came in and did a training for the board, and they do a training every year. There's the board attends our local accrediting agencies trainings, and then our governance committee provides trainings every year. They're required to attend the training when they become new members, and then it's renewed each year. Our meetings have an agenda, a set time. We often go over time just because we Muslims love to talk, but we get a lot done. We do. I think it's boards in general. Because at the university we had the same thing. But everyone shows up for meetings. Everyone, like there's rarely somebody missing, and we have about, I think, 11 or 13 members. The secretary sends out the agenda, then we get the minutes. We have action plans after each meeting, and then at the beginning of each meeting, everyone reports back. The committees report, I report, the finance committee reports, and so everybody's held accountable for whatever they're supposed to be working on. And it really, this process, and it's because there's a system in place. It's not that, and no matter who comes onto the board, and they're mostly parents, right? And the tendency for parents is to think of their child's place in school, right? But if everyone is reminded of their purpose on the board and redirected when they kind of start to go in the different direction, it really, really makes things run so smoothly. The relationship is collegial. There's a trust. There's a professionalism, and alhamdulillah, it took a long time for the school to get there, from my understanding. There's always room for growth and development, but if you don't have a practices listed in place, in a process in place of how you run the board, and a system in place for the relationship between the board and the principal, it sucks your energy, because you're always going back to some kind of problem or some issue, and principals have a lot more on their plate they need to deal with than worrying about that relationship. That relationship should support the principal to do their job. I'm done with my soapbox now.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Sister Leela. Jazakallah. Anybody else wants to say something?
Well, for our school, I think there is a huge governance issue in the sense that, the board does need training. But it's something it's something I think they have to want it, because it's such a small group, and it's, our board chair, bless his heart, has been board chair for many, 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 many years. And even the bylaws, our bylaws need a very, a very old. When we did our Cognia accreditation, that's when I first saw the bylaws. And so we know that our bylaws are not working, and they have board members' names from, many years ago, the founders of the school. So, but our school works, alhamdulillah. And when we did our CISNA Islamic Identity Parent Survey, our board scored high marks and admin scored high marks. So I really would like to see the governance issue, given
Attention.
yeah, we need to work on it for the sustainability of the school.
And remember, you mentioned earlier how frustrating it was to be at the board meetings, right? And that the things that you needed, you weren't really getting. And that's part of the issue. And it's not about just, we're doing okay. The parents are happy, that everybody's happy. We need, as Muslims, to really be looking at excellence and always striving. We should be the leaders. Like other schools should be looking at us and saying, wow, look at those Islamic schools. Look at how amazing they are. We want to be like them. But we're kind of stuck in this kind of rut where it's just the status quo. We're going along, we're floating. That's not what Muslims do. Muslims excel. Muslims are the best. Muslims lead. And we've been in this country. I mean, mashallah, mashallah. I'm not like we're very young schools compared to other private schools. We're fairly young. We're looking at 40 years, but we have the potential. We have the human resources. We have the financial resources. We have incredibly intelligent people who are committed leading our schools, right? Our school leaders are incredible people. And our boards are people who have sincere intentions, but
Right.
we can't just go on personalities. There have to be systems. And Islam is about systems, right? Even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were systems in place to create a state, a functional, sustainable state that we still replicate and emulate. Not just us, the world emulates the teachings of Islam.
But
Yes.
sorry, but Sister Leila, how could we change it? I mean,
So can you suggest to your board that, board training and reaching out to someone to do board training for your board, and then have someone work with you to revise your bylaws, and then start
Okay.
to, that's the first step, is to say to the board, look, I attended this session. I learned so much. And there's people out there who do this training. Can we have a board training so that we can and link it back to accreditation? Cognia said we need to update, and the next time they come in for accreditation, they're going to look to see whether you did or not. So let's link it to accreditation. In order to be accredited and fulfill the standards, you have to follow what Cognia said, for example, when it comes to your bylaws and your governance. Inshallah.
I will try that, Sister Leila, inshallah.
May Allah make it easy.
I mean,
Nagin?
Oh, the other day, we just had our banquet a couple of weeks ago, and there was a board meeting last week. And I mean, talk about just not staying on the agenda and not having the mission in mind. I mean, golly, I mean, somebody brought up how they didn't like the salad. Next year, the salad at the banquet needs to be changed. I mean, this is not like the banquet. We raised a lot of money, mashallah. I mean, okay, the salad's an issue, but like, do we have to talk about it in the board meeting? Like,
The salad's not an issue.
yeah, I mean, and this is, I mean, our issue with our board members. I mean, it's a lot like, I think in one of the presentations, we were talking about how, oh, these people are giving their time and they're, devoting so much time. So we're just kind of letting them do what they want and letting them, I mean, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have people with very demanding jobs on our board, and the Huda Academy kind of takes a back seat when it comes to being prepared for these board meetings. That's why if they have an axe to grind, that's where they're going to talk about it. And keeping it on task and our strategic planning meetings were equally frustrating, because it was, parents who were saying, well, this teacher didn't do this, and why don't we do something that, fixes this issue? And they're all just very personal issues without looking at that big picture. And that's the frustration that we're facing right now.
Yeah. And like Sister Najwa explained, the role of the board, they're the visionaries. They're the ones who are moving the institution, this very high level position where they're able to see the entire institution, not what's happening with a teacher, a child, and an event. It has to be much, much bigger than that. And I think, having an agenda in place where the board chair or the secretary moves the agenda along, and when people stay, really divert from that, bringing them back. It's all really important. And it frees up the principal and the energy of the principal to really focus on moving the school forward. And that's where your energy needs to be. Otherwise, and I've been in those positions where boards can suck the life out of you and send you to the hospital, literally ended up in the hospital, in ICU, because it was like beyond. And by the way, that you're looking shocked, but that happens more often than you know. Not that all boards are like that. Like, I've experienced really awful boards and really amazing boards, but it's like a hit or miss in our schools. And we really need to have more consistency across the board where our schools are functioning based on best practices, and just implement our principles, right? Our Islamic principles, and things will be okay, inshallah. We're coming up on the hour. If there are any last questions, I think we want to respect your time on this Saturday morning. We don't want to hold you longer. If there are any last questions or comments.
So I just will make one comment. This is Farah. I'll just make one comment. First of all, thank you, Leela and Sister Najwa, for the wonderful session and presentation. I'm sure we all learned a lot. It's definitely 2 hours worth spending on a Saturday morning. So thank you so much for your wonderful sessions and the guidance and the training that you've provided. I'll just share my experience a little bit. Maybe some schools can, benefit from it. So our school board is also no exception, in the sense that there is no schedule for board training. They're all great people, great intentions, but they're not educators. So what I started at my school is I developed my own self-evaluation form. And I'm a certified principal, and so based on the trainings in TPES that is in place in Texas for principal evaluations, I prepared my own self-evaluation form that has sections for my goal setting. And then in my evaluation, then the appraiser or the board chair can put their comments on it. So I floated that form to my own admin staff as well. And all of us did our self-evaluations, filled up for ourselves. And then I, as a principal, put comments on my admin's forms, encouraging them, guiding them for further goals, what have you. And then I submitted that same form for myself. I did one form for myself, and I submitted it to my board chair saying, hey, I've done my self-evaluation. Do you have any comments on it? So maybe if the board does not have that knowledge or information, maybe we as principals can guide them gently in that direction. And the form that I sent was well received. The board was very appreciative, and they shared their professional guidance. So something for us to think about. I mean, we have to steer them in the right direction. I think the onus is on us as principals as well, that we have to be gentle and professional, and we have to guide them as well.
Excellent point, Sister Farah. Excellent. And I have to say, like, what you saw from my documents was something that we came to, because my first year, they did an evaluation of me and sent it to me, and it was punitive. And it was the pandemic year. We had just gone through accreditation. The first half of the year was our 10-year renewal with a very rigorous accreditation process. And the old head of school was still there with me doing the process, but it was accreditation for and you all know what accreditation looks like and how stressful that is. And the first few months of my new job was accreditation, revamping the entire business office. And then the pandemic hit, and then I get and we did amazing, mashallah, mashallah. We went online the morning we closed the school, like we were ready to roll. Our teachers were in place and our parents were really happy. And we were the only school in our area that actually did that. And then at the end of the year, I got a punitive, some nice stuff, but basically to me, I saw a punitive evaluation. I was like, hold up, are you kidding me? And so I had a conversation with the board and I said, this isn't what evaluations look like. You know, this isn't how they're done. And we started the annual goal setting and conversations and the collaboration. And of course now of course they give me feedback, like, you know, maybe you could have done this, or can you try this? And we need work on that. And it's very collegial and I appreciate it. It helps me get better. It helps them kind of understand better. Like Sister Farah said, sometimes we really need to work as partners. And I think that's the bottom line. We can't see it as us and them. It has to be a partnership.
Alhamdulillah.
All right.
All right. So inshallah, thank you so much again for your attendance. We will be closing the recording now. And inshallah ta'ala, I'll put them in a YouTube. I'll upload the new CISNA YouTube channel and inshallah share the link with all the participants. So thank you everybody for your time today. Sister Leela, Najwa, do you want to do the honors of the closing dua, inshallah?
Oh, sure. Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for joining us. It really was a really enjoyable session as well. Thank you so much. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.